Jay, obviously, this seems like a big meet. One versus people always get excited about one versus two, but how do you try to find the right how do you find the right perspective on this? As I was saying to Sammy, you guys could have a score you're really happy with and not win the meet, and the same thing for Florida on Friday night. And obviously, there's a lot more of the season to go, and the postseason is when everything really is determined. So how do you find the right tone for this kind of meet at the same time knowing that everyone else is going to be excited because it's one and two.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's our messaging is what it is week in and week out, and that is that regardless of who we share the floor with, we're competing against every team in the country, and so you certainly will be measured by by what we do head to head with Florida this weekend, but we'll also be measured by what other people do around the country this weekend as well. So it's just trying to be consistent with our messaging. We're not tone deaf to the idea that it's one versus two, and certainly there's excitement that goes along with that. And there's a lot of familiarity between these two teams, and a lot of individuals who know each other. We've recruited a lot of the same kids over the last several years, and so it's been a good rivalry over the last several years, and one that has gone back and forth at some level, and so it'll be fun. I think it definitely brings some energy. Just knowing that you're on the floor with the number one team in the country brings a lot of energy to the environment, and we'll see how we handle that, and that'll be something that we try to make sure we stay in check from an emotional and standpoint, but you can't get too high, you can't get too low. It's another meet, and we've got to be able to treat every meet. If we intend to treat meets in April the same way we did all year long, then we need to get the practice of doing that now.
Jay, how many times have you used the recruiting line, "You look good in purple"? I mean, it worked on. And is that something you thought with Haley, or how many times have you?
I don't even remember. I don't remember even saying that. A lot of times when you walk into a gym and you might see some talented little 10-year-old, that's wearing purple, and you comment to them, you like purple, or who knows. I don't recall ever having said that directly, but it's not the first time that I've heard kids, say that I referenced them when they were really young. We're not, because so much of recruiting is about the relationship and the presence that you create with coaches that own these businesses, and you go in and you want to be a regular, if you will, in terms of visiting and just maintaining a presence, so that when the kids come in, they know it's the LSU guy, and so a lot of them will start to wear purple when they hear the LSU guys coming and that kind of thing. So I think that's as big a part of it as anything. You just you maintain a presence. Don't just show up when they have a great kid. Show up sometimes when there's some real young ones that may be coming along years down the line, but just be present with gyms that are going to produce great kids.
So, obviously she came from Everest and Huntersville. How do you tap into them? Was that relatively close to Georgia a long time?
Yeah, I knew those guys. I owned a gym in Region 8 in Georgia, and so I knew Han and Chen before they owned Everest, and just not, I wouldn't say knowing them very well, but certainly as acquaintances when we would compete against each other. And then once they owned Everest and began to produce higher level kids, we certainly started to show up there, and I, that was prior to me coming to LSU, so I've known them quite some time.
What is the dynamic like of that? You talked about developing the relationships with the gyms. Obviously, you have to develop the relationships with the parents, because the girls at some point could be very young, right?
Yeah, and that was the challenge over the last really 8-9 years, was that we were recruiting so early. I didn't even call it recruiting anymore. It was like you taking a shot in the dark, because you were only really getting to know what the coach would have you know about the kid. You never got to sit down and have a relationship, rapport, and individual meetings with the family. And you know, my thing about recruiting and where I felt like I made my hay in recruiting was being able to do that in 11th grade and being able to sit down and get to know the personality and how it would fit with the culture and the personality of your program. And we're back to that, thankfully. You know, we've had some rule changes that have sort of reset that and kind of put the genie back in the bottle, so everything can begin now in 11th grade, and we can't do any of that. We can't have unofficial visits or anything before that time now. But you know, for a while there, we were having unofficials being done by 7th and 8th graders, and they were willing to commit because mom and dad told them they needed to. And I remember Joe Oliva looking at me when Elena Arenas was on her visit in 8th grade, and she, you know, she looked like she was 12, and it was because she was 13 or 14. But he looked at me, you know, Monday after that visit and goes, what are y'all doing in your sport, recruiting kids this early? Because at that point, you know, it was more about the fluff. It was more about the colors of the Leo. It was more about Mike the Tiger. It was more about, you know, it was really, it had gotten to a point where it was weird. And so I'm glad we're back to a more normal level when we can have contact, get to know mom and dad, get to know the coaches, get to know the kid, develop a rapport and a relationship with them, and then be able to make an educated decision, and then be able to make a more educated decision too about where they're committing, because we had begun to see so many kids begin to decommit because they committed in 8th grade for reasons that were completely different than they would be if you were in 11th grade.
Incredible. Hallie never wavered, did she? I mean, she committed early, and that was it. I mean,
Yeah, she was unusual. I mean, I knew of her when she was still in Georgia, before she even moved to North Carolina. She was from a gym in the Woodstock area called Georgia All-Stars Gymnastics, and you could tell she was a pretty special little athlete even at a very young age. I think first time I saw her, she was 7 or 8 years old. So I don't know, I don't know what her mindset was, but there was definitely, an identification. When I left to go to LSU, she sort of felt an identity because she had known, her coaches in Georgia had known me, and her coaches in North Carolina knew me. And she visited and, was scheduled to visit another place in the conference the following week. And she made it clear that this is where she wanted to be, but if we weren't ready to go that route, they were going to have to keep making visits, and I wasn't willing to let that happen. So we went ahead and took it. And in 8th grade, you go, I think this kid's going to be great, but you don't really know. And so it was kind of a roll of the dice, and that one worked out. And sometimes they don't when you do it that early.
Do you get videos? I mean, I'm sure parents see videos all the time, but like, how can you possibly recruit all these gyms? How do you do it? Is it video, word of mouth?
It's both. I would say probably every program has their wells that they go to, I guess, that they, go to over and over again. And I've got coaches that are in different regions of the country that I've got a good relationship with, that I'm friends with. And, they'll give me a heads up if they think there's a kid that maybe is out there that's kind of an unknown commodity. But for the most part, we at the top, the top 10 schools, the pool of talent is manageable enough that you can usually identify a lot of the same kids pretty easily, and then we certainly do get a lot of video. We get videos and emails. I get probably in the neighborhood of between 5 and 15 a day from kids that are looking around and wanting to market themselves to different programs. And but for the most part, we go after kids that they've figured out they don't need to email you. So because and so a lot of times that we occasionally discover a diamond in the rough, through the kids that reach out to us. But most of the ones we want, we better go seek them out.
Can you think of someone on the team or recently who you discovered that way?
Well, I think of Sarah I didn't know anything about her, but I looked over and saw her do a vault timer and went, oh, "Who's that?" You know, so after the camp was over, when her parents came, I said told them I wanted to set up a time to sit down and talk to them, and that one was one that kind of came out of nowhere. I would say, you know, Maya Hambrick, I discovered at camp at Georgia. I knew about her and was trying, you know, when I was in that position, trying to get her to come in a walk-on capacity, and which would have been like steal of the century, because not many people knew about her, but you could just tell she was just an athlete. I mean, just raw. Didn't have a lot of the big skills yet, but was super athletic. So.
When did these rules go? When did the rules change?
They've already changed. It says COVID has put a delay on everything. So we'll be, you know, September 1st is when a kid's 11th grade year is when you can begin to have in-person on or off campus contact. June 15th is when we can begin to make phone calls and emails and texting and that kind of stuff.
And that's not too late in the 11th grade. But
No,
you already established a
no,
relationship.
I am so happy that we have moved it back. If it were up to me, we wouldn't be able to talk to them until July before their senior year, which is the way it used to be. Because you just don't, so much can happen. There's so much water under the bridge that can go, you know, you just don't know, particularly in our sport. You know, a lot of physical growth could potentially be a negative versus a positive that it might be, say, in basketball or football or some other sports. We want to kind of know where they are. As much as possible, you want to know what the end product looks like, you know, before you make a $52,000 a year scholarship commitment to somebody.
Getting to this year's team, is this year's freshman class different in that their skill level matches their maturity? Like, and you can count on both of them?
Oh yeah. I mean, this bunch, and we haven't seen the best of all of them yet. I mean, you know, I'm telling you, over the long time, I'm not sure everybody believed me about Alona last year, but that's beginning to bear itself out. And I say the same thing about Olivia Dunn. Over time, you're gonna see the contributions that kid can make. They have a vocabulary. They all have a large vocabulary of skills that we can draw from, and so we're able to kind of pick the things that work best for them and that happen to be the easiest, and try to get them to just dial it in and be consistent. But they're all proven competitors at one level or another, whether it's the JO or the elite level, and in some cases both. You've got a good mix there of skill level, experience, and maturity. Elena Arenas is very mature. She's a gamer, and I'm learning that more and more about her. Where we've got to, you know, get some of the things ironed out is consistency in training, because so many times at the level that all these kids come from, they're used to being able to train 35, 38, 40 hours a week, and we've got to dial that down and get it into a much smaller window, and so efficiency becomes the name of the game. And a lot of times, former elites who, you know, are used to being able to be on an event for an hour and a half or so every day, when they've got to get it done in 30 minutes, there's not a lot of room for error. And so you have to kind of coach that out of them and get them to be very efficient. I mean, Sarah Finnegan had a difficult time with that her freshman year too, and she figured it out and became one of the most efficient training kids I've ever been around. She was done in 15, 20 minutes on every event by the time she was a senior.
Is this year's team unique in that you have this complement of freshmen that you can now, because you said their vocabulary or skills is so large, that you can plug them into situations? Whereas I think of teams in the past, it used to be 3-event girls,
Yeah.
you know, you have a number of them.
Yeah.
If they didn't hit, you were in trouble that night. Now
Yeah.
it seems like really.
Yeah, we do, and we've seen that. I think the Auburn meet's a prime example. Elena and Sierra both doing floor for the first time, and we've been able to have some movement. Chase Brock has been in and out on bars, and I think we're going to see Cameron Ryan. I know she didn't have a great experience on Friday night, but that kid's coming along on every event, and there's so many of them. There's a lot of mouths to feed here, and in practice, it's becoming more and more difficult to make the decisions. I think it's fairly clear on every event who our number 5 and 6 are, if we're healthy. But 1 through 4, we've got a lot of kids that can go between 9.85 and 9.9 on any given day, and kind of being able to discern who's got the hot hand and who's where you want them mentally is becoming the challenge, and trying to make sure that they all stay engaged, because if they're not making a lineup, you got to keep them happy. You got to make sure they understand that they're not being overlooked.
In gym, is COVID a coach's best friend in that it really allows you to keep the girls locked in and dialed in? We were talking to Sammy earlier, and she said, basically school, gym, and sleep.
Well, that may be a byproduct of a very tedious and hard to manage situation. I wouldn't call it a coach's friend by any means. I mean, it's been a real pain in the ass, to be honest with you. But I would say it's the byproduct of it is that there hasn't been a lot of extra time, outside of the gym for them to, get distracted. But another negative byproduct is that their mental health. We have to make sure that it's easy to get, you're spending all your time in your room or at the gym or with the same people all the time. It's easy for them to slide into, a little bit of holes mentally if we're not careful. So we try to pay attention to that as much as we can, and create different avenues that they can engage with one another that aren't the same every single day.
Jay, did last week, having to sit out because of the COVID, and the way y'all came out and performed, did that kind of prove to you that this team is dialed in? I mean, when it's time to go, it's time to go.
Yeah, I think for the most part they are. I'm proud of them for what they've done so far. They have accomplished a great deal already, not the least of which is just being disciplined in their life right now because of the situation that we're in. But I caution them all the time. We haven't done anything yet. I mean, we're only as good as what today brings in practice, what tomorrow brings, what Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week brings. And so we're happy, but we're not satisfied. And in fact, that's exactly what I told them, in our meeting after our inter squad prior to the Auburn meet. It was good, but we had momentary lapses of that focus, and we still haven't put a meet together where we haven't seen that little dip that occurs on one event or another. And I think we certainly have the ability to do that, and that's what we're working towards, and that's why we do a regular season, because the goal is to be there when it matters, and be able to sustain that all the time. We talk a lot about sustained energy, sustained focus, and we're seeing improvement. There's no doubt, but we have yet to get where we want to be.
You might have some eyes on you this week that you might not normally with the 1 versus 2. Can you kind of explain to them how this is not like football? You have one bad weekend and it's not going to derail your season.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a sport that's driven, that's subjectively driven by the perceptions and the things that the judges see, we're judged by score and so I saw a UCLA team one year that I can't remember exactly how many they won, but they may have won 2 regular season meets, something like that, and went on to win the national championship that year. And in other sports, your win-loss record can determine whether you get to the postseason. Getting to the postseason for us is determined on a scoring average. It would be more similar to and not exactly, but it'd be more similar to an RPI index or something than it would be to a win-loss record that would determine that. And that's not even a great comparison, but it would be closer because it takes into account statistical data rather than just win-loss.
It's probably hard for people to grasp. like Arkansas has a losing record, but they're 5th in the country, right?
They've happened to go up against number 1, number 2 twice, and another top 10 team that they beat. So I think you're beginning to, used to be even in football, if you had a loss, you dropped precipitously. Now that's not necessarily the case the way it was when I was growing up. So you're beginning to see, with other ways of looking at things. I mean, you can lose to the number 1 team and maybe you don't really drop a whole lot in a football ranking. That's kind of how it is here. If you lost by 2/10 to Florida at home, and you actually improved yourself. So it is tough for the traditionalists to really understand, but if it doesn't take long to wrap your head around it, if you're paying attention to what we're doing, it's really not that difficult to understand.
And you guys could win the meet Friday night and still be number 2, right? Based on the season average.
You could.
No one's going to vote you. No one's going to vote you to number 1, right?
No, they're not going to vote us to number 1. And we really, so that first meet score that we had, that 196.55, eventually that'll get kicked off. And when we go to the NQS, but everybody else is going to drop whatever their low is too. And so, like Oklahoma's sitting with 2 scores lower than us right now. When they get to drop both of those, they'll see them come flying back up as well. So, I do at the end of the day, do I believe we're one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country? Absolutely, I do. But so I think we're ranked. The numbers are what they say. You are what the numbers say you are right now, and that's the thing for people to keep in mind.
Have you done anything different this year? Finally got to do something you wanted to do? You feel like you're like, all right, this is the year I got the team. I can try this.
There's a lot of, like I've said this before, Dee Dee was so gracious to me when I got here and treated me like a partner that, a lot of the things that we do philosophically were already being, a lot of the things that I believed in philosophically were already being done here the last, several years. There's not much different. I think probably, Dee Dee and I we're very similar in a lot of ways, but we're also very different. Our personalities, our temperament, things of that nature. I don't know that that's me consciously making an effort to do things differently. Dee Dee's very good at reading the moment. I tend to be more methodical, like I'm going to stick to a plan, and I think together we balanced each other out that way. And I think Bugs is sort of fulfilling a lot of that role. Of being able to come and tell me when she thinks we need to deviate from what the system would call for, if you will. And so we're working well together in that same capacity. But I wouldn't say we're doing anything categorically different, no.
You're the system?
Do you
think you're a robot?
I'm a system guy. I'll say that. I like to lay out a plan and stick to it without deviating based on one day that may not go right.
Take us through the first part of the season in terms of, like you said, y'all had the 196.55 score for the first meet, which wasn't bad.
No.
You guys have built not gone up every single meet, but kind of been in a really good progression in that regard. You just talk about your progressions so far through the first half of the season with scoring and like you said, getting those contributions from a lot of different people.
I really couldn't be happier. The only thing that's been, the things that are out of our control, whether it's Kaya's Achilles or having the contact tracing quarantine that we've run into, those things have been sources of frustration. But even with all of that, we've been able to do a lot of the things we set out to do so far, which was to get as many faces as we can, some real experience, and we'll be able to continue to do that. I'm already looking at, when we'll be on the streaming platform again in Tuscaloosa, which will give us potentially, if they allow, some opportunity for some more exhibitions and in spots, maybe from similar people, but different events, and continue to build on that. The last 2 years here, we've been competing pretty much the same kids every single week. And there are kids in our lineup now that have not come out for sure. I mean, Haley's been in the all-around every meet, and Sammy's been in her 2 events every meet, and on. But we've been able to sprinkle, particularly with the freshmen and some kids that are really contributing kids that are in the walk-on capacity that needed to gain some experience. We've been able to do that, and to this point, virtually every time they've come through and risen to the occasion. So, I like where this team is. I'm proud of what they've done so far. It's kind of like watching the stock market. Doesn't mean there won't be that little dip, but if you're in it for the long haul, the idea is to finish higher than where we started, and we're moving in that direction for sure. So, if you're an LSU Gymnastics fan, I would say bye. Based on what I'm seeing.
Shoot, I had a question. I forgot what it was now.
I threw you off there, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking of GameStop. Oh, that's what it was. You talked about the exhibitions. How did they determine that? Because you were the only meet in town last week. You would have thought they would have let you have this.
No, well, if we're on the live SEC Network platform or ESPN, because of the TV constraints, we can't do extra stuff. But when we're on the streaming, the plus, then we've got some flexibility that way.
All because of TV, Michael.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
They finished so quickly. on Friday.
That's true. It was very fast.
It was a fast one. I was shocked when we got out of there. But I'll tell you this: I'm generally not a huge fan of doing exhibitions, but this year we have so many good kids that are doing the job in training that you've got to find avenues to give them something to put out there in front of fans and everything like that. So I'm not a huge fan of doing them, but in this year, and particularly with COVID, where you could be affected week over week, where you could lose 3 or 4 kids, and you got to have somebody ready to go in. Well, they're not ready if they've not gotten an opportunity to go in. So I think they're at a premium, and we can't do them often enough. I'd love to be able to do more of them because I think this year more than ever they're important to do.
I was kind of saying.
Yeah. You've been building towards that, towards trying to get her in an all-around this week. I know it's only Monday, but what are the chances of her being able to do the all-around this week?
Well, we'll see. You talking about Kaya?
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see. She came in short on that vault after warming up perfectly, and it jammed her ankle a little bit. I don't think it's all the information we've gotten is that it's not related to her Achilles at all, so that's good. We'll just have to see today when we get in the gym about what her pain tolerance is and where is she right now. I've talked to her Saturday evening, and she said she was doing better, but I haven't had a chance to check back in with her yet.
Is that like a limited use thing, or is there really even landing on bars?
Bars. I would imagine bars is fine. I don't see us taking her out. Here's the thing. I don't think she's in a place where if we wanted to, we could, force the issue and go. The question is that what we should do? The question is, do we run the risk of is the risk reward there? What does that look like? Because to lose her, for March and April, or to even put that risk on the table right now for what? A dual meet between number 1 and number 2? I'm not going to do that. We want to win, but we also believe in the other kids we have, and so that's why we've put them out there, and they're going 9.875 and that kind of thing. So does it, could Kaya, is she one of our best on all 4 events? Absolutely, and she should be out there. But I want to make sure that when we put her back out there in that position, that we're giving her the best chance to be successful, and we're putting our team in the best chance, in the best scenario, big picture as well. It's not worth a risk to me to lose her late in the season for any dual meet.
The first 2 events against Auburn, it was tight. There was good scoring from each of y'all. Can you feel that? You talk about, you compete against the whole country, but is that good? Do you feel that energy?
Yeah, I think everybody does. I think you feed off of it. I don't know. I think if you asked all of our kids, some of them would tell you they see what the scores are, and some of them would tell you they don't have any idea. And I don't try to dictate that. I think that's up to each individual and where, what helps them be in the best place they can be mentally. But I certainly think you can feel the energy when you hear when another team's excited about what they're doing, even if you didn't see it. And so we try to, I'll wrap them up. You'll notice after every event, we'll circle up real quick, and it's just sort of to kind of give them an update. And I don't really throw out scores, but in general, I'll say we did a great job there. You put yourself right where you needed to be. Now let's take it home. Let's put the final nail in the coffin, kind of thing, and indicate that we're in a good spot. Or I might say, okay, let's not make this any more interesting than we just did, or that kind of thing. So try to speak in generalities that keeps them where they need to be mentally, but not get them hyper focused on scoring, because at the end of the day, we don't have any control over what the judges do. Sometimes we feel like we get underscored. Sometimes I will admit we've been overscored, and I think that's true with every team. And so, I think we have seen that. That's just the nature of our beast.
Twitter hates your scoring, man.
I don't worry about Twitter. Twitter and the Twitterverse do not dictate 1 ounce of my thought.
It's my new favorite thing to do, though. Watch people complain about your scoring.
I know. I hear about it, but I
That and the Leo love. Like, they love the Florida Leos.
That's great. I'm glad. I had nothing to do with that either.
Tell us a little bit about Florida, though. Obviously, Trinity Thomas is one of the best in the country. People have some great gymnasts.
Yeah.
Some great skills from those people too.
Yeah. We wanted Trinity, and she selected Florida. It was late in the game. She's a great kid, not just a great gymnast, just a great kid. And a lot of girls on that team that our gymnasts are familiar with and that we're familiar with, and great assemblage of great gymnasts over there. They have probably the most impressive roster on paper in the country, and so I have a ton of respect for Jenny Rowland and Adrian Bird and Owen, their assistant coach. They do a great job over there, and so we're very familiar with them. They're very familiar with us, and it's if all goes well, it'll be a great meet.
Thanks, everybody.
Anyone else that you think you might not be able to have available this week?
I hope not. Keep your fingers crossed. I think we'll have Sarah Edwards back on her too, and that'll be a big shot in the arm by itself.
Yeah. She didn't do floor last week.
She didn't do vault either. She didn't do anything. She was not outside of her COVID protocols at that time. So today is her first day back 100%.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, okay, I meant to ask you about that after the meeting. I forgot.
Yeah.
But today she's back, you said.
She's back today.
I know we just talked to you for a half hour. Anything we missed?
No. I appreciate it.
Were you happy with how the Super Bowl turned out, or not?
I was fine with it. I kind of was pulling for the old guy. I hated to see him and.
Yeah, it was funny too.
I hated to see him and the Honey Badger mixing it up the way they did. I don't know what the deal was with that, but it was good. I really wasn't invested in it one way or the other.
I was happy for Devin White and Leonard Fournette. I mean, neither of those guys have won a championship.
Yeah.
Leonard famously hadn't won since he was playing playground ball in New Orleans East.
Yeah. Well, if you watched that game closely, you could make an argument that Devin White should have been the MVP. This is the way he played. Now he wasn't in on every play, but he is such a disruptor, man. That guy.
I just thought about this, knowing media members and the way we vote for the MVP. Those votes were in before his interception.
Yeah.
So I think if they take the basket,
Yeah, because that he's a man out there. He really is.
Thanks, Jay.
I think he might be in the Hall of Fame one day.
Maybe.
I don't vote for that either.
Thanks fellas.
Best of luck this week.
All right, guys. Thank you.